Hey, I am thrilled to have Allison McCune Davis with me today, and I know you're going to love this conversation. Allison's an author, a traditional naturopath, a mom of five, who has had a lot of phases in her life. She pursued entrepreneurial business in the world of natural health for the last 14 years while raising her family. She's the author of a book called 60 is a Good Start, a powerful body, a purposeful life, and a plan to make it happen. And she advocates for reimagining life after 60 and inspires women to embrace aging as a time of opportunity, vitality, and purpose. Allison, I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, so when we were connected, this is what grabbed me, your book title. 60 is a good start. And I thought, ooh, I like that because as I shared with you before we hit record, I just turned 51
Mhm.
and I am starting to every now and then feel like I am maybe aging out, maybe if I'm not quite as relevant as I used to be. And I know that that
Not
feeling,
true.
I know. Well, that's why
But
you're
I
here.
understand. I understand.
That's why you're here. And I
Right.
know that that feeling doesn't go away without intentionality.
Yeah.
And I know also I have a lot of women in my community who are 10 plus years older than I am. So I'm really glad you're here and I want to talk about this. So what sparked this 60 is a good start, 60 is just the beginning. What sparked this conviction for you?
Well, it was when I turned 60, which I'm 64 now. So that was a few years ago. Um, you know, as those decade birthdays came, and I remember it starting at 40 and then 50 and then 60, that whole preceding year, I just found myself to be very introspective and asking all the big questions. What am I doing with my life? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing, what God's plan was for me to do? And all of that. And at 40, I was pregnant with my second. I started later than most. And at 50, we were adopting our fifth.
Wow.
And so in both of those instances, I thought, yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? This is, but at 60, it was a whole different story. So, my third one, my older two were out of the house. Third one was just about to leave. I still have two younger ones because, again, I started late. But I was just things were different now. I had spent the past decade kind of in terms of what was I doing outside of the house, teaching women about natural health. Locally, we'd have small groups or online, just different kind of ways like that. And I still love those conversations, right? They're my favorite. But I just, it's that purpose thing that kind of what we were talking about earlier, how, I wanted to be waking up every morning super excited about what I was going to be doing. And that wasn't happening. And I was like, okay, something is shifting. Something I'm going to have to do something new. I don't know what it is, but I'm looking for that thing that sort of new, adjusted, different purpose, whatever it was going to be, that was going to not just for like that year, but that was really going to take me into the next, say, 5 to 10 years. That decade of my 60s, and so also during this time, I had been down in Dallas with my girlfriend that I grew up with, who was also 60. And we went out and had drinks one night with her friends that were also about that same age. Of course, we're all talking about this fact. And she said, well, I hear 60 is the gateway to old age. And I just had this vehement
Oh.
response. I was just like, no, I do not accept that. And I was telling my husband about it that next morning. We were on a walk, and I I don't know, just all of these feelings were going on. The key feeling was I was restless. And so I realized, and this is after living a lifetime, that I was going to have to say yes to some things. I felt like that popped up in my life that may not be the thing, but they were going to lead me to the thing. You know what I mean? Yes, we go through these moments of where we're trying to make big decisions, and then all of a sudden it hits us over the head. Oh, of course, that's what I'm going to do, right? So it was about a 7-month little process from that, well, from my birthday to just, and those feelings of restlessness, that I started doing a few things that popped up, like got involved with this guy and his big calendar. And I was like, I love a good calendar. I'm a big planner.
Mm-hmm.
That was my initial career, was in TV producing. And then I homeschooled also, both of those for, around 20 years. And so in both of those, planning was essential.
Sure.
Organization, planning, all that stuff. And so, got his calendar, got in his group on Facebook that came with this calendar. And it was all these people living life, and he wanted you to create a Masogi. So a Masogi is a Japanese word for a life-changing event. And he wanted you to have a Masogi every year. And it was just like, do something significant every year of your life. So you remember, oh, in 2020, I did that. In 2021, I did that. In 2022, right? And so I was like, okay, what could my Masogi, and it could be anything, absolutely anything. Could be, going to hike up this mountain. I'm going to, repair a relationship. I'm going to just, anything you want that's memorable. So for several months, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And finally, I'm in this group, just sort of lurking, in this Facebook group, and this girl pops up and she says, I'm going to start 75 hard tomorrow. Have you heard of 75 hard? And does anyone want to do it with me? And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'd heard about it like 4 months prior. I'd listened to the podcast. This guy that started it, he's muscular, tattoos, Pierce, I don't know. It's like, I'm not his target market at all. There's no way I could do that. It's a very hard, physical,
it's pretty intense,
yes. challenge for 75 days. Well, then she said that, and I'd been in this group for maybe 3 months, just looking at all these people talking about what they were going to do. And I thought, I'm going to go listen to that again. I went and listened to it again. And I thought, I think I can arrange my life. I don't have to work out like he did.
Mm-hmm.
I can take a walk. I can sit and stretch. I mean, those count, right? So I thought, and I was very motivated because I had turned 60.
You needed your Masogi.
And I need a Masogi. So I did that. And it was one of the best things I'd ever done, partially because it was committing to myself to do something. We make promises to other people all the time, and we keep them, and we do them, but we don't do that for ourselves. We start something, we say, I'm going to start this, whether it's a New Year's resolution or whatever it is, and then we don't finish it. I'm going to do this every day, and then we don't do it. So that was a big part of that thing. Well, I also did a mastermind during that time. And then midsummer came along, and I was doing a kind of deep breathing meditation thing that I like to do. And it just hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to write a book. And so of course, my brain, like the bully brain, was like, what? Yeah, it's all been written before. Nobody wants to read it, all this kind of stuff. But I kept thinking, no, I think this is what I'm going to do.
Here you are. Awesome.
And here we are.
Here we are with a book called
it's a 3-year process.
Yeah. Well,
that's editing normal. And then re-editing and all that. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yes, I'm very well aware of
yes,
how
you
long
are.
it takes. Yes. Yeah, it's not just a matter of just and we're done. Yeah. No. Okay, so let's talk some about that book. 60 is a good start. Challenges the narrative that many of us have thought about, like your friend saying, oh, well, it's the gateway to old age, of what 60 should look like.
Yeah.
Through this book and through what you're doing now, what are some of these myths that you would like to bust and for us to start reframing our mind around?
Well, I mean, the big myth is that it's too late. Yeah. Right? It's too late to do this or that. It's too late to get maybe physically healthier. It's too late to work on our brain acuity. It's too late to find a new purpose. There's one part in the book where I list all these people that you've heard of, that found their real purpose in life in the last third of their life.
Yeah.
And, I look at this as this incredible opportunity where, we've spent, let's just talk about women, we've spent the last 2 to 3 decades either raising kids, a full time career, or both. I mean, we have been giving, 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 serving, serving, right? We just
Right.
like it's all giving out. And like barely, I mean, many times in just survival mode. And the idea of self-care, that's hard to wrap our brains around. Sometimes it's really hard for people in the church. I mean, because of the whole giving, serving
Right.
thing. Yet we have to fill up so we can overflow unto others. So I mean, that's a fact. But now kids are grown. Maybe we're not working like we were, maybe retired, who knows what. There is more white space. There's more mental brain room for us to think and to consider ideas and to take care of ourselves. And guess what? We have the wisdom of all these years of life.
Right.
I mean, and we talk about that, but the culture doesn't really, I don't know. I guess it doesn't really foster that, but it's huge, and it is a true fact. We have wisdom. There are people that need your wisdom. I don't care if it's one person, like a grandchild that, or if it's 1,000, whatever, in whatever capacity. I mean, there are people that need what we have. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. Are you
But we
familiar?
just have to be like, okay, maybe I do have something to give.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had a few of those moments myself. It's like, oh, okay, I've got something valuable. Have you read the book Strength to Strength by Albert Brooks? Are you
I have
familiar with?
not. No,
Okay. That
I'm going to
needs to
write
go.
it
Yeah,
down.
that needs to go next on your list. I think you would really like what he has to say. And he calls this, so he's a happiness expert. He does
Mhm.
a lot of work. He is a professor at Harvard, but he does a lot of research on happiness. But just like you and I, he's had several phases of his life.
Mhm.
Like his formal education was, I think he was a French horn. Like he played in an orchestra, or he played an instrument. I can't remember what one it is. Anyway, he talks about this transition from what's called fluid intelligence to like doing math on the fly and being able to like remember all these facts to what he calls it crystallized intelligence,
Hmm.
which is more of putting all of the things together,
The wisdom.
which exactly I
Mhm.
interpret as wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's such a empowering book as for
Mhm.
people who are in phases of
Yeah.
transition. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think you would really love that book. I need
Yeah.
to put that
Sounds
on
good.
some list.
I will.
Um, but
Always
definitely,
love a good book.
yes, yes. I think that would go along quite nicely with what you
Mhm.
do. So let's talk some about um, some of the things that you write about in the book, because you walk us through this self-perpetuating circle of purpose. You have body work, brain work, and world work. Tell us about how these three elements work together, and what that entails within your writing and your guidance for us.
Well, what that comes from are studies I looked at, longevity studies, because longevity and natural health were my two fascinations. How do people get to be older and
Mhm.
still with it, physically, mentally, the whole thing? And of course, most people know what the blue zones are.
Yes.
The locations across the world, there's 5 right now. They're looking at 6, but that are where the most centenarians are, the conglomerations of 100-year-olds, healthy, doing well, moving, doing their life. But also there's some big Harvard studies. There's some cancer studies, even for people that weren't supposed to have a good outcome, but did because of all these lifestyle habits. And all of them, when you kind of collate them all together, they all kind of start saying the same things. So what we're talking about are lifestyle habits that we all. So, and I'm trying to make it easy for people to little by little, baby step by baby step, work these into your life as habits, because one of my favorite lines is, your future is hidden in your daily routine.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
so
so
good.
true. And
Yes.
I was so the opposite of that my whole life. Just like be real intense about this, that, and the other for however many weeks or months. And I do something totally different. And like, I just was sort of very much this work hard, play hard kind of person. Yeah. So in terms of like daily consistency,
Mm-hmm.
that just was not me. But now that's what this is all about, really. So body work is the physical,
Okay.
brain work is the mental, emotional, spiritual, and world work is our purpose and our relationships. So under each of those pillars are the big five. And so my what I'd like for you to do, and this goes to, well, let's go back to the title of the book. It has a double meaning. 60 is a good start. So yes, 60 years old is a good start. You could be 50, you could be 70,
Sure.
somewhere in there. But 60 is a pretty key number. But also 60 days is a good start because, Dr. Caroline Leaf, the
Yes.
neuroscientist, yeah, I
Yes.
love her. She says in the microscope, you can see habit formation on the nerve cells in the brain, on the dendritic spine. You can literally see these little umbrella shapes form. What it is long term memory forming, but that's what habit formation is. It becomes long term memory. And so it takes at least 60 days to form a habit. It
Okay.
might be up to 8 months, depends on the person, depends on the habit. Is it a physical habit, a thought habit, whatever it is. So that's the other reason 60 days is a good start. So what this whole thing leads to is the 60-day dare. So what I want you to do is pick something out of the big five under body work, brain work, and world work to do for 60 days. You can just pick something from body work and just start with one thing out of one category. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever, everybody's life's different. So you're going to design this within the parameters. But for instance, in body work, it's eat, drink, move, sleep, breathe. So eat, it's going to have anything to do with what you're eating, how you're eating. Maybe you're going to take something out of like that's not so good for 60 days. Maybe you're going to add in something. Maybe it'll be a supplement. Maybe you'll just eat a certain way for 60 days. Again, you'll design that. Drink is all about water.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting at least half your body weight in ounces a day? And that requires, always having it with you.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Pull that up. We're going to both show
Yeah, yeah,
our 40. What is our, what? I don't even know what
yes.
these are. These big
This
Stanleys
is,
that
I
are.
have a big one, and this is the smaller size,
Okay.
but I have both that they're always sitting around.
Yes.
Um, and then move would be moving your body, physical exercise. And maybe you already do great stuff. Maybe you want to increase it just a little bit for
Mm-hmm.
60 days. Or maybe you're just totally sedentary and you're like, I just need to walk to the stop sign and back.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Great
That's
place
what
to
you'll
start.
do for 60 days.
Yes.
Just again, you're designing it. Sleep. We got to get good sleep. And I've got a ton of tips. There's a ton of things you can do to help that, to change that. I know it's a problem for a lot of people, but it is essential. And, it's the number one thing to do when we're trying to heal something in our body. I mean,
Yes. Oh,
it's like
yes.
I was just reading all about, Alzheimer's, and you start getting to this age and you're like, those things run through your mind, and I was watching this podcast about, all the things that a person needs to be looking at. And one of the big ones is sleep,
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
and then breathe, deep breathing sessions. People don't think about that, but we don't
Yeah.
breathe right in America. We breathe very shallow up here. We need to
Yes.
be doing deep breathing. So,
Yes.
anyway, that's body work. And then brain work is write, read, clear, meditate, create. So, that's going to be writing, journaling. Maybe you're dealing with grief or trauma and just journaling that. Every day, you're going to journal for 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
say, or, you determine. Or maybe you just need to do a brain download. Maybe you just
Yeah.
wake up and there's so much stuff in your head. I like get it out on paper and boy, that feels better.
Right.
Maybe you
Yes.
do that every day. Read would be just reading something nonfiction. We don't read anymore. We're just all on our phones and computers, but literally reading something nonfiction that's going to improve you in some way. Could be business, could be personal, whatever it is. 10 pages a day, my recommendation. Clear is either decluttering or detoxing your house. So we know, clutter causes the mental clutter. All of these are going to de-stress. Everything we talk about is going to de-stressing our lives, which is like one of the major problems
Yeah.
that most people have. Detoxing is getting all the chemicals out. Laundry room, bathroom, under the kitchen sink is where they usually are, and that I can help people in that area too. Meditate would be meditate, pray, or affirmations, like a 10-minute session doing that. And then create would be some kind of creative art making, needlework. I love needlepoint, just like, it's just there's studies that lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. It's just a great thing to do. I love doing that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that would be brain work.
Okay.
And then world work, the first one on that, I have 60 questions. This is for the person that was like I was right when I turned 60, restless, don't know what I'm doing. These would be journal the answer to one per day for 60 days. And I think that's going to get you to what your purpose could be right now in your life.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then engage would be, now these you can rotate throughout the week, but engage, there's a lot of lonely people. And especially when you get to this point in life, empty nest, maybe widow, maybe divorced, or just single, and maybe on top of that, an introvert. So, and I get it. I call myself an outgoing introvert, but I am an introvert, and I can sit at home for a long time.
Me too.
And it's great.
Yes.
But, the number one thing they're saying for longevity is relationships. It's not, exercise and what we're eating, it's relationships. And so that would, if that's me, then I would be like, every week, call someone for going to get some coffee. Call your sibling that lives across the country that you never talk to and just have a good conversation. Just some kind of engaging with someone else.
Yeah. I want to put a pin in that. I want to let you finish and then I want to come back to relationships because I think you have a couple more under that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I want to park here for a minute because you're right. Relationships are so important. Connections are so important.
Yes.
And I think one thing that happens, it's funny, I'm in a coaching group like for personal trainers who train women in menopause. And so it's a wonderful group. They're so smart. And so I'll ping out questions and other people will too. And so I'd asked a question one time specifically about women in their 60s, about challenges. And it was very interesting to hear trainers' perspectives. And some of them were in that phase and some of them weren't, but about a lot of women, they work and then, or career is a forefront focus, and then they retire. So they're losing community in the work world. I've spoken with one woman who said, I used to run and then walk with my coworkers. So I lost my partners when I transitioned from retirement. We have people who are moving around a lot, maybe to, empty nesting and downsizing and moving to kids. There's just a lot of transition, it seems like, in this decade. And so you mentioned a couple of those, but I'm just wondering if you might be able to dig into some of those, and some other suggestions on reinvigorating relationships or establishing new relationships, which is really scary. I mean, I think a lot of us are like, I've got friends. Like I have friends from college and I love them. And they are some of the, the air that I breathe. And I still need to get face to face with people. And they're all over. I mean, they're literally coast to coast.
Yeah,
so
same.
Yeah.
Those lifelong friends.
Yeah. Guide us some about situations like that, people are thinking like, stop telling me. It's like my husband was like, if people will stop telling me to not be so stressed out, because every time someone tells me not to be stressed out, I just get more stressed out. And and I feel like sometimes we tell people, oh, connection. And it's like, all it's doing is making us feel more lonely because maybe that connection is elusive at this phase, or it feels like it is.
Yeah. I think, I'm going to just tell you two ways, which are the next two things under world work.
Okay.
And they're kind of easy ways, I think. number one, that third one under world work is called gather, and that is on the spiritual level. Okay, so part of the longevity studies, all of them
Mm-hmm.
talk about there has to be a spiritual component of some sort. And so for that, you know, go to a church once a week. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not used to that, or if you don't do that, I always say they're usually very welcoming
Yes,
to
they
new
are.
people.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's just one idea. And there's multiple. I mean, you know, go try different ones if you're not doing that already. And maybe you are part of a church, but you just haven't gone in a while, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
they always have small group studies, and there's so many opportunities at a place like that. I
Yeah.
think that could be great. You keep going. You just sort of naturally make friends because you're going to sit there. Like if you're in a small group situation, or a big group that breaks into small groups, right? Those are kind of cool, like Bible studies and things like that. But also, the fourth one is called help, and that's volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, my gosh, people have totally found their new purpose in life by volunteering in some way. And again, it's an incredible way to be in relationships with people, you know, food banks and, you know, just like United Way or that RSVP organization, you know, you can just Google what are all the ways I can volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're so thankful to have you there. I always say, you know, make sure you're doing something you really want to do, because it's easy to kind of get pulled into something you really don't want to do, and then that just brings up, you know, sometimes even resentment and stuff like that. So I always say there is somebody that's meant for these positions, and if you're in the way but you don't really want to do it, you're kind of blocking the way for the person that does really want to do it,
That's a good
right?
point. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
those are, I mean, those are two areas. And then, you know, I was actually just thinking lately, you know, that have you heard of that game Mahjong?
Oh,
It's like
yes.
it's a big deal all
I
of a sudden.
cannot step outside of my house with someone asking me if I want to
I
join a
well,
mahjong.
I keep seeing it. I don't know anything about it. I've seen from a distance some people playing it once, but I'm just amazed at all these
Yeah.
people talking about it. And so, you know, or just card games,
Yes.
or, you know,
Yes. I'd rather do a book club personally.
yes, a book club. I
I'm like,
mean,
I
there's
figure things out all day long. I don't need to figure out about mahjong.
right.
That's just me, though. No
Well,
shade to it.
it looks kind of like gin rummy. So I'm like, well, I know
Yeah.
how to play gin
I do
rummy.
know how to play that. Yeah.
Maybe I could figure that out. But you know, so there are a lot of opportunities, I think, out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It depends on where you live too, of course, but even in small towns there's, you know, there's groups and things like that. You just, you know, gosh, you could also just, you know, chat GPT.
It's
give me
true.
give
Yeah.
me 20 ideas on how I could, you know,
Yeah.
engage more with people and meet friends and make, you know, I'm sure they'd have a lot more, but um, they're
Those are
out there,
great. Yeah. Those are
right?
great. Those are great. Okay. So I'm going to kind of leave this with one final question before I get into the questions that I ask all my guests. But and I apologize if we've somewhat talked about it, but you know, this I feel like kind of going back to the beginning. There's this question of like, well, what now? I'm 60.
Mhm.
You know, what now? Kids are gone. Retirement's coming. Maybe it's already happened. Previous sense of purpose just feels unclear. So, how do you help women redefine purpose at this stage? I mean, do you just say go into these five world works and go from there? I mean, give us like
Oh, I
the
would, if
next
someone
step.
was in that position right now, I would say you got to answer those dream questions. So, like I said,
Okay.
there's the 60 questions, and you would journal the answer to each of those. Because it requires, and you know, part of after I did that 75 hard, maybe it was partially during that, I did a mastermind with, it was women, but it was all ages, and it wasn't just focused on midlife. But you know, we were asking all those sort of deep questions. What am I doing with my life? Like, you know, and really, and that's sort of these questions. I think one or two questions does come from what I did with that group, but
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of what I come from the last 10 years, which I've been looking at this stuff for that long. And so these were what I felt like were the best. And I really think they can lead you there. But you do have to give it that attention.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go to that. You said find a Bible verse, one of my favorites. So,
Yes.
and I will. So this verse, I learned about this verse probably like 25 years ago, and I was listening to a preacher. Actually, I think he was dead when I was listening to these tapes that this friend of mine gave me. And he was talking about this when he was an old man. And so, but when he was a young man in his 20s, and I think someone told him to pray the verses Ephesians 1:17 to 19. And so I've always liked putting verses in first person,
Mm-hmm.
so like an affirmation. So and this has to do with purpose. So I was praying this right before I turned 50, probably, because that's about the time I started teaching women about natural health. Well, then when this whole thing about 60 came along, I started praying it again.
Okay.
And I even put it to music
Oh,
back then, so
wow.
I could remember it. But I'll just read you the actual verse. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glorious Father, may give you the spirit of wisdom and revelation so that you may know him better. I pray also that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, right?
So
The
good.
riches of
Yeah.
his glorious inheritance in the saints. Um, but basically, thank you, God, for the spirit of wisdom and revelation, that I know you better, and that the eyes of my heart are enlightened in order that I know the hope to which you've called me. And you're called to something now. It
Right.
wasn't just when you were 30, right?
So true.
We're called
Yes.
to something till we die. And so I love that. And I know this group, your audience is geared this way. And
Yes, we
so
are.
I think that is a great prayer to pray. And I just like to say it in thank you, Lord, that that I know what you've called me to.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then, like, that's in the spiritual, and then that's going to bring it to the earthly realm
Mm-hmm.
so that we do know it and it hits us and we get it. Right. So I think that's part of, answering the 60 questions, be praying that. And I think that can get us where we need to go.
Okay. Tell us where to get these 60 questions.
The book, are they in the book? Yeah. Wait a second. Now I can't even remember if they're in the book. Yeah, they're at the back of the book.
Okay.
So they're in the book. 60 is a good start.
Okay. All right. So,
And then there's also a planner that goes with it for the 60-day dare. So both they're on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's an Audible also if you like Audible books. But
okay. That sounds great. And then the 60-day dare, is that something that we can, like, if I go to your website and I click on 60-day dare, you've got something where, is that like where you have a wait list to join and then everybody joins together, or how
well,
does that work?
you can do this on your own. You can do it with your friends, or you can do it with me. And so that's going to start February 2nd, but you probably want to get in there before that. But there will be a spot where you can put your name and your email, and then you'll get the updates of when we're starting, all that stuff.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, Allison, I've got a few questions I ask all my guests. One is I love learning about people's tattoos because I have found that typically people will think very long and hard about something that they're going to put on their body for the rest of their life. So,
Yeah.
do you have one? And if so, would you mind sharing what it is and the meaning behind it? And if you don't have one, but you had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
I do not have any.
Okay.
They're not my favorite. And that's just because I'm a natural health girl.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
But if I had one, it'd probably be a cross.
Okay.
And where would I put it? I'd probably try to put it somewhere not over an organ. So, like maybe right there.
Okay, on your shoulder, on the side of
Yeah.
your shoulder. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I'm not gonna force you into that. Don't you worry. It's
No
funny.
worries.
I was just with my husband's side of the family, and we had one of my boys there and two of my nephews and my two sisters-in-law. Anyway, it was kind of like a group, but it was all my husband's side of the family. And I asked this question because I just think
Yeah.
it's fun to hear.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah.
And my mother-in-law had such a look of horror on her face as I'm asking this and as people are answering it. And some of them were somewhat genuine, or some of them were very genuine answers, and some of them were totally obnoxious. And so I hadn't gone and finally said, well, Amy, what about you? And I said, it took me a long time to figure this out, but I think what I would do is just that Christian fish right behind my ear. And I said, I've always said it was because that way I could hide it from my mom. And I said, but mother-in-law, I think I need to hide it from you more than from my mom because you look so horrified. She said, yeah, you better not do that, Amy. And I'm like, I'm 51 years old.
I know, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
All right. So Allison, tell people where they can connect with you.
Yeah, on social media, I'm mostly on Instagram and Facebook, my full name. And then my website is my full name, AllisonMcCuneDavis.com.
Okay, so Allison McCune Davis, just about anywhere. You have already shared your meaningful Bible verse, so I'm going to let you have the last say. What is one simple thing you want us to remember about our conversation, big or small, but just one simple nugget to walk away with?
I'm going to say environment triggers behavior. So in your home, in your life, try to set up your environment to trigger the behavior that you want. Like, for instance, I put all my supplements in a little baggie and I put them in a little pretty bowl, and I see it right when I walk in my office.
Okay.
So my environment's triggering me to, oh, I got to take those. Pretty glass bowls in the fridge at eye level with fruits and vegetables.
Sure.
Tennis shoes out, so you see them. They're not in the closet. You put them on, you're one step closer to walking out the door and down to the stop sign and back, right? So, yeah.
Those are always good, yes.
Yeah.
I call that being kind to your future self. Same type of thing.
Very nice.
Which I can't coin. I got that from Kathy Lipp, one of my writing mentors. Okay. All right. Thank you, Allison. That was awesome. Go out there and have a graced day.